can you get into it later?
Yes, so all of our meetings are archived on our YouTube channel.
And is that how other?
And according to the governor's executive order, which allowed community boards to meet electronically or virtually, they should be posting these. All public entities that have meetings like this, whether it be community boards or other municipalities, should be posting live stream links, whether that's like run independently, like city council's got their live stream built into their website, or on YouTube or on Facebook Live or something.
But I'm not specifically talking about CB6. I'm talking about in general. If you can't attend a meeting live and it's recorded, you can find it someplace.
Yeah, they're all once they're live streamed, they're archived there as well. So the full board meeting, for example, where we were joined by Senator Schumer, has been viewed almost 600 or over 600 times by members of the public. Yes, let me see, 642 times. So.
Wow.
Yeah, feel free to catch up on any meetings that you can't make across the city. And Corinne, you're good to go now. The recording is
great.
Started.
So welcome to the February 16th, 2021 meeting of the CB6 Housing and Homeless Committee. My name is Corinne Vanderdonk. I am the chair of CB6 Housing and Homeless Committee. This meeting is called to order at 6:33 p.m. And tonight we are joined by Committee Vice Chair Rich Mintz and Assistant District Manager Cody Osterman. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. Abigail Krusmark has volunteered to take minutes tonight. Thank you, Abby. You should all have received several emails from the board office with the link to the Doodle sign-up sheet for minute takers at your committee meetings in 2021. For your convenience, the link for this committee is also being posted in the chat right now. At the direction of the board chair, each committee meeting must have a designated minutes taker and a designated backup just in case. To eliminate the guesswork, make sure that you volunteer for as many slots on the Doodle sign-up sheet as you can. If more than 2 people sign up for a particular month, the office will make sure to distribute the duties equitable and will let you know in advance which months you're due to take minutes. If you have not already filled out Doodle, please do so right away. Thank you, Rich, Joan, Anju, and Abby for signing up. Claire, we just don't have a sign up for you just yet for minutes. We will now take attendance by roll call. Cody will conduct a roll call.
Okay, committee members, please, I will call your name. Please unmute yourself. And when your name is called, say present. Joan Berenbaum.
Present.
Claire Brennan.
Present.
Abigail Krusmark.
Present.
Rich Mintz.
Present.
Anju Suresh.
Present.
Corinne Vanderdonk.
Present.
Jeff Zellen. Jeff hasn't joined. That's 6 of 7 members present.
Okay, so the agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you. Committee members, if there, sorry, I lost my spot. Committee members, if there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of either committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objection. The agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. Committee members, the minutes from the January 27th, 2021 committee meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there's no objection, we will adopt these minutes as drafted. If you object to adopting these minutes, you may raise your hands through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the January 27th, 2021 meeting are adopted and will be available on the CB6 website tomorrow. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulties, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty. The chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. We are required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of the meeting, so please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. The order of the adopted agenda will be followed, and we will start with a review of resolutions passed by the committee in the past few years. And with that, is there a volunteer who wants to start on their reso? Rich?
I can go.
Great, thank you, Rich.
You hear me okay?
I do.
All right.
Yeah.
You're going to lose my face while I'm reading from my notes,
Okay.
but you'll still be able to hear me. So just a reminder of what this resolution was. At the beginning of June 2020, at the peak of the George Floyd demonstrations and the police abuse in New York City, the community board considered a resolution calling for cuts to the NYPD budget, which was being voted on at the end of June for the period beginning July 1, the budget that we're now 7 or 8 months into. The argument we made was that despite the COVID cuts that other departments were making, the NYPD was going to get $5.6 billion in the proposed budget, which was going to be an increase. That's roughly 20% increase in 6 years in a situation where our per capita police budget is larger than other large cities. We said in our resolution that NYPD should engage in cost cutting like other agencies, and the money saved could be invested in other human services and medical services. And so we asked for, and this is a quote, substantive cuts congruent to the cuts in other agencies. So that was our resolution. It passed by a large margin, not unanimous, but a large margin at our June full board meeting. And it was submitted to the city on June 10th. So, you know, I sort of knew what happened, but I looked into the numbers today. The short answer to what happened is that we were unsuccessful, in my opinion, in our call for substantive cuts. As you may remember, there was a call for a cut of $1 billion from the roughly $6 billion operating budget of the police that a wide range of community stakeholders shared toward the end of June. And what happened on the very last day was that Speaker Corey Johnson and Mayor Bill de Blasio arrived at a deal that was pushed through the council by the council members on the budget committee, Danny Drum and Vanessa Gibson. And this collectively was positioned for media purposes as a nearly $1 billion cut. But I looked at the numbers prepared by the Citizens Budget Commission, a nonpartisan watchdog organization over city finances. And they calculated that the cut to the operating budget was about $345 million, which is 6.6% of the operating budget of the police department. And that's larger than the agency average of 3.6%, but it's much smaller than the 13% that Parks took, or the 24% that the Department of Youth and Community Development took. The mayor claimed that there would be an additional $130 million cut as a result of overtime expenses being capped, but it's not realistic to assume that those cuts will actually occur. The CBC doesn't believe that they will occur based on historic performance. And in any case, that would be an only one-time cut, and the full overtime budget would be restored in 2022. In terms of the portion of the $345 million cut that was recurring, that's only $82 million on, remember, a base of over $5 billion, or a 1.6% recurring cut. And that all came from hiring reductions, most of it from canceling the July Police Academy class. But they also killed some programs that we need more of. They cut out a bunch of traffic enforcement vacancies. So the net reduction to the uniformed headcount from that will be about 3% on a base of 36,000 uniformed officers. The other thing that happened is that two other things happened. The mayor announced concurrently that school safety agents and school police would be shifted from the NYPD to the Department of Education, representing a $350 million savings. But first of all, that's not a reduction in the policing budget. It's just a movement of policing responsibility to another department. So we don't actually know if it would result in a policing strategy change. And secondly, that was a separate agreement. It wasn't adopted in the budget. And as a result, it's not obligatory. The council did not mandate it as part of the budget settlement. So I don't know if that has happened. I haven't found that yet. One smaller thing that happened that we should note is that the city, as part of this, did move responsibility for homeless policing from NYPD to the Department of Homeless Services. That's important, not from a budget perspective. It was a very small amount of money, about $5 million, which in any case is still being spent just by another department. But I do think that the policing structure that handles the concerns around homeless people is likely to be administered in a more humane way by DHS than NYPD. So as small as that is, I would call that a win. So net, we got about half of the $1 billion that a lot of community organizations were calling for, and that many of us would have agreed was the substance of what we intended in the resolution. But even that, much of it was savings that are not permanent, and we're going to have this negotiation again in 4 months.
Thank you so much, Rich. Does anybody have any questions for Rich? I actually have a question. Do you recall of our which ones of our electeds voted for or against this particular?
I can get that easily. I know Carlina Rivera voted against, and Keith Powers voted against. I'm not sure about Ben Kalos, but I'm pretty sure that he voted against. I can get that information while someone else is talking, and then I'll
Okay.
come back to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Rich, for that
Sure.
update. Anju, you want to go next?
Yeah, I can. My update will be fairly quick. So I looked into, I covered the resolution that we passed in support of creating a statue or a monument up at the northeast side of Central Park, closest to Harlem. That would commemorate the Exonerated Five and all the social justice efforts. It'll be importance of social justice efforts, especially in light of all the BLM protests over the summer. So this resolution was done on the backs of the work that Community Board 10 has been doing. I reached out to the chair of their Parks Committee, and I got a bit of information. So they are March 25th. So in about a month, they're going to actually have a formal subcommittee that's created to look into what this exhibit will look like, which artists they'd want to pitch in for it, where they're going to get some of the funding, how much the city can fund, and where some of the other funding might come from, like foundation support, for instance. So this is, I think, one of our more recent resolutions. So they're still very much in the planning phase. If anyone's interested in getting more involved in these efforts and being part of that subcommittee, definitely let me know. Karen Hori, who is overseeing it, definitely open to having people come in as well. But yeah, so they're going to officially form that subcommittee to look into building this exhibit on March 25th, so next month. Yeah.
Right. Anju, when you say a formal subcommittee for CB10 or in City Council, of what organization?
It's for CB10, and one of the questions I had asked is if it would be open for other people to join or at least like attend the meetings. And I haven't gotten a response back yet on that, but the thought of the subcommittee the idea behind the subcommittee is to have different stakeholders, not just within the city, but also like architects come in and members of the community also come in and kind of give their input for how this should look like.
Thank you. Hold on, and where's my chat? Thank you, Anju. Joan, do you want to go next about the DHCR funding? Oh, you have to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have quite as much information as everybody else does, but I reached out to our Assembly member, Harvey Epstein, to see whether the legislature had followed our resolution, and he told me that they were prepared to give a lot more funding than DHCR wanted. They didn't want any more funding. So DHCR got as much funding as they wanted, much less than what the legislature was prepared to grant them. And I don't think we know yet to what extent the funding has been able to improve the agency's ability to process the tenant-initiated complaints. So that's where we are. I will keep following up to see to what extent DHCR has actually been able to use the funding that they have gotten to process the complaints and to invest in data modernization. But we don't know that yet.
Great, thank you, Joan. So, so they did receive some extra funding to.
They didn't want extra funding. They wanted just the same funding that they had been receiving.
Okay, so, but did they get it anyway?
They got that. They got that from the legislature, but the legislature was prepared to give them more funding.
Okay, so they basically have no interest in modernizing and digitizing their agency.
Yeah, or
Okay.
protecting tenants.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joan. And then just for the record, I want to read what Rich wrote. So on the police budget, Councilmember Rivera and Councilmember Kalos voted no, and Councilmember Powers voted yes. So thank you for quickly looking that up, Rich. Abby, you want to go next on the outreach teams?
Sure. So just a little bit of background. At the end of 2019, we've been doing a lot of work around the Bellevue Park area. I wasn't really involved here, but there had been a walkthrough with Assemblymember Epstein, with multiple stakeholders. This area is generally in a place where a lot of services seem to converge, and there's been some problems with homeless in the area. I don't know if Corinne, you want to add any more by way of background, but it's essentially,
yeah.
So essentially, our Breaking Ground partners who do outreach work in this area, sort of broadly, propose a dedicated team of 2 outreach workers and a social worker to be dedicated really solely to the area between 23rd and 34th Street, where Bellevue, ACS, the VA, Langone is. They sort of termed it the public health district. I'm not sure if that's our name or their name. So we submitted that as a budget request and didn't get back a real firm answer. It was basically just the standard, DHS works with providers to enhance services that are working successfully, identifying best practices, expanding those services are ideal. And it sounds like from Reshma's update at the full board that a lot of our budget requests sort of received this stock response given the citywide budget situation. So that was kind of a dead end there, but I reached out to Breaking Ground and asked if they had perhaps established this and we didn't know about it. And they kind of said that their impression was that the outreach team proposal was working its way through the CB budget process, and they were kind of waiting to hear from us, and we were waiting to hear from them. So they proposed a call, Corinne, if you're amenable.
A call with Breaking Ground?
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
One of the things that I had heard while we were working on other issues is that Breaking Ground did get an overall budget increase. So, one of the things that I'm curious about is if even though our specific request wasn't granted in a way, it was kind of wrapped up in a larger budget increase for Breaking Ground, period.
Yeah, my impression is that they were perhaps waiting on a budget item that came stamped as like, this is your CB6 maybe budget item, but then I'm not sure how much discretion they have to internally allocate or earmark specific funds. I'm not sure if anyone is on the call. I let them know that we had the meeting tonight. But I think I don't personally know a lot about the budget process or how that would work, but I think it's worth sort of circling back on the proposal and seeing where things stand and if there's any flexibility on the Breaking Ground side to sort of take this up as an initiative from the extra funding you're referring to.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for researching this. Thank you so much. I will go on to the pact conversion Nycha resolutions. There were two resolutions that our committee produced around this. One was urging Nycha to create smaller bundles and kind of create more neighborhood specific RFPs so that smaller nonprofits could bid on these pact conversions, which is a HUD program. If anybody's not, is everybody familiar what a pact conversion is? So a pact conversion is, or a RAD conversion, it's a HUD program. It was started during the Obama administration as a compromise and a workaround. And the idea is to take public housing and convert them from Section 9 to Section 8 housing, and have lease the land and the buildings to a developer. And so it would essentially be taken out of, in our case, out of Nycha, and they'll have a private company. And then that private company could raise cash based on their Section 8 income, would provide capital to do these incredibly necessary repairs that are, of some of these Nycha buildings that are just in terrible shape. Obviously, we would rather for there to just simply be funding for public housing. At the time, that was not in the cards at all. Right now, with the new administration, there's definitely some movement in that direction. So that's for the future. Lydia Velasquez just asked for, is seeking funding. So she is introduced legislation asking for $70 billion in funding, with $32 billion would go directly to Nycha. Obviously, this is just still in the early stages. But so Community Board 6 worked very closely with a building on 344 East 28th Street that was part of a pact conversion. So we passed a resolution asking for smaller nonprofits to be able to bid. And we also passed a resolution that I couldn't find on the Airtable. I mean, it's mentioned, but a copy of it isn't on there, where we were urging Nycha to be less top down and communicate more efficiently with the tenants in these buildings. So since that time, and 344, by the way, is an unfunded Nycha building, meaning that Nycha is a federal program, but in the 60s, the state also built a few buildings, including 344 East 28th. And then at some point decided that they actually didn't want to do that and just abandoned the upkeep of those buildings. And Nycha has been kind of filling in that gap. But they're kind of in a no man zone. They're kind of a no man land. So these were the first buildings to be converted for that reason. So they were converted in December. 344 was handed over to a development company, PRC. The tenant association, in the meantime, has completely stopped cooperating with elected officials or the development company, and is urging the tenants to not sign the lease, the Section 8 leases, the conversion from Section 9 to Section 8 leases. There was a hearing in January where Gail Brewer gave testimony with definitely some pretty serious issues. One was that, and this was mainly based on Weiss Towers in Uptown, that, you know, the new bathrooms were suddenly just going to be fitted with like these anyway. So the renovations that were promised were not, looked like they weren't going to happen. There was a problem with communication, where if there was any kind of complaints or repair needed, the Nycha hotline no longer worked for these residents, but at the same time, 311 system still had it in there as Nycha, so they couldn't file complaints. That I spoke with Katie Loeb at Carlina Rivera's office. She said that has since been resolved. You know, there's an incredible amount of mistrust, which is historically justified. And so far, PRC has not really been able to break through that. In our building, and on 344, about 50 residents, 50 apartments have not signed their conversion from Section 9 to Section 8. And in theory, they could be evicted any moment. So that's 50 evictions. That's a lot of evictions, but PRC so far has spoken with Rivera's office, and they're going to hold off on any evictions for now. Tomorrow, there's a town hall being held with the electeds for this building, and I will attend and keep you updated. Any questions? Nope.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah.
The building uptown, is it the same developer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was like a bundle, and yeah, so it was 344 and the Weiss Towers were one bundle. But yeah, thank you for that question. Jeffrey was going to speak about the resolution that we just passed around COPA, but he's not here. I didn't really research, you know, I was kind of counting on some. I can give you a really quick of what I know. I know that it went to.
I just give you an excuse he probably would be making. He was reported out of the judicial screening panel for civil court, and he's probably trying to get endorsements from the various Democratic clubs.
Ah, okay. So it went to committee. I don't know quite sure what happened there. I do think that, you know, COPA, one of our state senators, Myrie, has also introduced this at state level, which there was a really great but very long article that was published from Fordham University about this, which I will forward to all of you. It's very interesting. And it also kind of, in a way, also talks about what on the same issue as with the PACT conversions, about that, a lot of these RFPs are too large. And so only a very small group of developers can bid on RFPs or buy buildings in the city. And so COPA, addresses some of that as well. I mean, it's a different kind of, but it's the same problem. It's just like there's only a few developers or a few very, like large companies that can go in and create affordable housing. So that's my report. That's my bad COPA report. Any questions on that? No, seeing none. Which will take us to our next agenda item, which is the chair's report. I just wanted to mention that there was a fire at Strauss Houses, our other Nycha building, not too far from 344. And there was a fatality. It was very sad. And, Strauss Houses has had a problem with fires being set in the hallways for quite some time, and CB6 has been trying to talk with the fire department about it in the past, but they just haven't responded to us. So this was information that I would get from the tenant association directly. And so we are looking into that further. And I will keep you updated. Rich, do you have any old or new business or anything to report?
The only thing that I'll mention is that, I had a conversation with a friend at the MTA today about the homeless situation in the train system. And one of the things she said was that because a large share of the homeless people in the system are people with mental health problems, they are not necessarily getting the services that they need when they are moved into intake at 30th Street. It is mostly men, by the BRC street outreach team in the subway system. And that is something that Corinne and I talked about this morning. That's something that we would like to look into in the coming months here on the committee. That's the only thing that I have to bring up.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Rich. And yes, one of the things that I would like to learn more about is not just supportive housing for people that are formerly unhoused, but really housing for people with developmental disabilities. So try to, what does it look like? What is the process? How can we encourage units for people with developmental disabilities in our district? And then this also comes back to the 197A committee, maybe health and education. If anybody has any leads for me to talk to people, to organizations, please let me know. This is definitely something that is almost never spoken about. It's either like supportive housing for people that are in the shelter system, or found themselves destitute, but not just kind of a humane transition from for adults with developmental disabilities to be able to live independently, especially thinking about autism and issues like that. Okay. So if there's any member of the committee has any old or new business, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm asking for a motion to adjourn. If there's no objections, we will adjourn this meeting. Seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 7:12 p.m. Thank you all.